Hello there and welcome back to another review. Now we're going to be looking at a movie that takes sort of Lam Ching-ying and his Mr. Vampire movies and puts them in a modern day setting. Now this isn't a Mr. Vampire movie, but I think at some stage it was known as Mr. Vampire 5. Magic Cop is the film we're looking at, and it was made back in 1990 and directed by Tung, who also directed like Jet Li's Hitman. And if you aren't sure who he is, he's the young boy who plays Bruce Lee's student in Enter the Dragon. Now speaking of Enter the Dragon, why is it 88 films decide to mention that on the back of this Blu-ray release in regards to films sort of Lam's been in before? Out of all the films they could have mentioned, like they mentioned Eastern Condors, but why Enter the Dragon? Like surely Prodigal Son would have been one of the main contenders when talking about Lam Ching-ying's back catalogue. So as you probably have guessed with this movie, Lam plays a policeman who's like a Taoist and magic. He has like, you know, magic skills, and is, you know, you can probably understand what the film entails before you've even actually ever seen this movie, if you've never seen it before. And this was another one of the movies that was released on the Eastern Heroes video label, VHS, back in the day in the 90s. Now, Though 88 films are usually top tier when it comes to releasing uncut movies, they had to make a cut to this one, as there is a scene where Michiko Nishiwaki chokes a cat, much like in Snake in the Eagle's Shadow. Most versions have that scene where the cat takes on the snake, the full version of that sort of cut out. Well, I don't want to watch animal cruelty in any shape or form, but just to let you know, there is a cut in this edition. I mean, let's face it, aside from like Sammo Hung, Lam Ching-ying was pretty much, I would say he was the face of like Hong Kong action horror comedy, and this film goes on just to cement that fact further. And there is a lot of fun to be had in this movie. As I say, if you could just look at it, it's just a Mr. Vampire movie just in like a modern day setting, but there's a lot more to the film than that. You know, it's not a perfect movie, but it's still a highly enjoyable one, and as I say, just Lam Ching-ying, just incredible as always. You know, but just this film just goes on to cement the fact there is, you know, like I say, there's a lot of fun to be had. Some of the special effects are quite cool, and the film goes along, you know, I would say quite a good pace. Of course, the film borders on the absurd and is downright silly in places, but this is one of them movies that sort of no Lam Ching-ying fan, if you are a massive Lam Ching-ying fan, this is definitely one release and one movie that you really can't be without. And what is great about this film is we get sort of the old versus new, the modern approach to the traditional approach, taking them sort of sorcery and mystical elements and putting them in a modern setting. And Lam has never, to me, I mean, he's amazing. He was always amazing whatever he was in, Lam Ching-ying, but here, as I say, he's just sort of never been better. And it's worth noting as well that Lam actually produced this film too, so I can imagine he had a lot of say in terms of the character and what happens in the movie. Sort of, it's, you know, it's his production. Let's face it, it's pretty much his movie. Much like the Mission Impossibles, you know, despite the director, they're still Tom Cruise movies. Like, it's still him that calls the shots and everything else. So we meet Lam Ching-ying as Feng right away stops this kid urinating in the street, and that you have to love how even here they still give him them classic bushy Mr. Vampire eyebrows. Then we have these people, Arlene and Third Aunt, burning joss papers and accidentally extinguish the flames they shouldn't do, as that means the gates now are open. I love how he goes from being a cop to like a Taoist priest in like 5 seconds, showing right away that this guy sort of wears 2 hats. And it's like I say, he's like a cop and knows all about magic and spirits, right? As if we didn't know that was what the movie was going to be about. And it's actually quite a cool, menacing scene with like this spirit going along this like brickwork, which he actually manages to sort of subdue. And then the film title appears, and in terms of opening shots to a movie, it really isn't a bad setup at all. Then we cut to these cops at a restaurant who are all like undercover and trying to bust some drug traffickers, and they suspect this girl with a briefcase. It makes me laugh that beneath all the magic, special effects, rituals, walking corpses and everything, at the bottom line of this movie is like a drug operation. You know, that's like, there's just like at the bottom, if you take all the mysticism and sorcery out of the movie, it's basically a drug dealer. Anyway, this girl is possessed as like no one can stop her as she walks, even after getting shot in the leg. Going so far as like one of the cops even handcuffs himself to her, but she just like will not be stopped. She then gets run over, and it's quite a funny line here when they're like, how do we write the report? To which they say, that's easy. The only trouble is just getting anyone to believe it, you know, because it's like, well, nobody's going to actually believe that what just happened here. So Lam goes to investigate the body and is suspicious as the bullet the bullet wound hasn't swollen unless she was dead before she actually got shot. But yeah, Lam's look in this is perfect with the almost like jet black haircut and the mustache as well. So Uncle Feng is all respected and protective as his niece, then explains the basic difference with a corpse. If it is stiff, it's a vampire, and those that aren't are zombies. So you learn something new all the time, you know. If it's stiff, it's a vampire. If it's not stiff, it's a zombie. So you just learn, you know, to most people we should know that anyway, but you know, you're always being educated in this film. Now regarding special effects, you know, they aren't going to be mind-blowingly amazing, but for a Hong Kong movie, and a movie made at this time, they really aren't all that bad at all. Feng thinks something like used her zombified body to transport these drugs, see. Look out for Wu Ma here as the chief with some very suspicious looking facial hair. So it turns out the woman in question died 7 days before what happened, and the movie does just glance over things. It doesn't sort of go in depth sort of with some of the plot points. They just sort of, it happens, and it's one of the movies like, if to somebody watching this, I'd be like, just go with it, you know, just go with it. Don't analyse this film too much, don't give it a hard time, because that's how sort of the film is played out as well. They do just glance over things. It doesn't need to necessarily make sense. You're just here to sort of have fun and have a good time, you know. They don't go into what, why and how, and the drug element does get sort of very underplayed, almost forgotten about as the film goes on. So Wilson Lam, the skeptical cop, is tasked with assisting Feng, and guess what? He has a thing for his niece, and Feng is known as the Tornado as he wreaks havoc sort of wherever he goes. And there are real elements, as I say, to make a point of that traditional guy working in the modern world, like, you know, like Lam's character, Uncle Feng, he's like totally out of sync with technology, even at one point getting spooked by a printer that doesn't understand, and he like doesn't understand a door alarm. And Lam Ching-ying can handle that comedy so well, and his very sort of dry sense of humour. If you look at his character in Prodigal Son as well, very sort of straight initially, but as the film plays out, Lam's character in Prodigal Son, and I always mention Prodigal Son because it's like I've mentioned numerous times in loads and loads of reviews, it's probably my favourite kung fu movie of all time, but Lam in that, very funny, very funny, and especially obviously Mr. Vampire as well, but in there as well, I'd say he just has that, because he plays it usually, it's so straight with his mannerisms and everything. When anything happens to him, and they're like in this kind of movie, it just makes it funny, and that was the genius of Lam Ching-ying. So as with standard in many Hong Kong movies, the film does slow down in places to make way for some more comedic scenes, with him and his niece moving into Wilson Lam's bachelor pad, even though he wants to get rid of him, and these two sort of hate each other right away. And let's just say there's very little respect there. They go to Sim Sa Shui and into this gym looking for this guy Eddie, and like I say, despite the movie overall being quite fast paced, it does slow down in places. And this guy gets away, but Feng is able to use his magic skills to map the direction of the car in like some sand at one point. And I'll have to love when Feng pulls the insects out from his partner's mouth. The guy lets out like a massive fart that everyone on the street sort of runs away from. And we have our classic Hong Kong 80s action movie villain, Billy Chow, here as well, and Eddie goes to see like his female boss, who has like a whole blow-filled thing going on with like her cats, and of course here played by Michiko Nishiwaki, most famous as well for being in movies like back in the day like My Lucky Stars. She was in God of Gamblers as well. She was in the Line of Duty Free, loads of movies. So Billy Chow is like her muscles, and they kill Eddie, and she plays like this sorceress. That's the only way you could sort of describe her character. So they track down Eddie's car, and Lam starts to control his body using his skills. Much like the Mr. Vampire movies, you don't get like fight sequences or kung fu bouts as such. This is not what movies like this are about. It's much rather, insane, off the wall, crazy set pieces. So Michiko managed to sort of take Lam's soul. They go to the mortuary, and Feng figures they must have used like an ice spell. They think Feng is talking nonsense even now, and they go so far as to lock him in there. So when he turns up, who is played by Frankie Chan Chi-lung, who no doubt you will recognise from movies like Full Contact. He was also in Ricky O's Story of Ricky, and he is like full-blown possessed zombie corpse at this stage. No actual hopping vampires yet in this movie, it's worth noting, and we get quite a cool set piece here that actually builds and builds. Lam Ching-ying's performance is played in quite a reserved manner, and Wilson Land's our cop skeptic now believes all what he says and his talents after he sort of saved his life, and he wants him to have this like jade talisman to warn off evil spirits. They go to this Japanese restaurant where they meet Billy and Michiko, and Lam gets frozen by an ice sorcery attack. Probably has got confusing where we have Lam Ching-ying and Wilson Lam, and sometimes I keep calling them both Lam. I'm not trying to confuse you on purpose, I promise. And this is where the pace ramps up yet again, where things go so fast in that classic Hong Kong movie style. We get lots of gimmicky stuff happening too, like when Michiko attacks cheeks being blown up, having to put head in freezers, sort of whizzing through the ending here. But there's a film you really owe it to yourself just to watch and enjoy. I won't go too far into this in the movie, like with what happens, necessarily in certain scenes. But as I say, you really owe it to yourself to watch and enjoy. It's like I say, if you like spooky encounters, if you like your Mr. Vampire, if you like your Dead and the Deadly, you're going to have a lot of fun with this movie. So Michiko confronts Feng on the roof and starts launching concrete slabs, and it's great seeing with him smashing and avoiding sort of what is being held at him. Lots of flames and fire too for good measure, and overall it's just shot really well. Make no mistake, this is a Lam Ching-ying film, and it's largely because of him that the film works and is carried really well. I don't think it may have had as much fun in this movie if Lam Ching-ying wasn't in it. The fact, like I said, Lam Ching-ying produced, and it is sort of done in that Mr. Vampire spooky encounters vein. It just gives it that extra seal of approval that, as I say, it is a Lam Ching-ying movie. And I say, if he wasn't in it, I don't think it would have quite the same impact as what it did. So there is a point where some sheets go up around them, which I would imagine is when the production went to sort of the studio, because they're sort of on location. Then they have these sheets go up, and I think it was probably a very easy way for the production team to move it to a studio. Billy Chow appears, and Michiko changes her appearance to something more akin to something out of The Evil Dead. She gets blinded and can't see them. This is what I mean about sort of these set pieces. In Mr. Vampire 2, we had that. Do you remember the bit in Mr. Vampire 2 when we had the slow motion sequence where no one could move at normal speed? And here they have our evil sorcerers who can only pick up sort of from sound. There's always a bit of a gimmick that they employ. So, after Lam sets fire to her, she just randomly falls down an elevator shaft. But comes back up. I'm not sure if this was all Michiko in the finale. And it's one of them movies you don't really know how... It's hard to explain, but it's one of them films that you don't really know how great and fantastic and how much fun you're having sort of till it's over. Because you're sort of going along with it. I saw it back in the day. Watched it again recently from this release, and it is one of them movies where you're going along with it and you're not sure if you're enjoying it or if it's average or whatever, but as the film goes on and it sort of gets to the end and you're nearing the end, you're like, actually, I'm having a good time with this movie. It's one of them that you realise how much fun you're having, and unfortunately sometimes with movies you don't always realise until actually the film's over. Anyway, Feng prevails and ends with him letting his niece stay with Lam, and sort of that's the end of the movie. But go and check it out for some early 90s black magic crazy fantasy fun, and watch it for the ever dependable Lam Ching-ying, who even now is still sorely missed, and the film, the Mr. Vampire movies, are just a great showcase to how awesome the man was. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.